probably don't know it, but you could be a criminal under federal law. As part of our ongoing series, Nation of Criminals, I've had our staff investigate the thousands of government regulations that could send you to prison. CBN's Jennifer Wishon started our in-depth reporting yesterday, and in a moment, we'll talk with a renowned Regent University law professor about how easy it is to run afoul of the law. First, an excerpt from Jennifer's story that explains how government bureaucrats have turned America into a nation of criminals.
If you get out of bed today, there's a good chance you will commit a crime. There is no one in the United States over the age of 18 who cannot be indicted for some federal crime. That is not an exaggeration, says John Baker, a retired law professor from LSU.
Here at the Library of Congress, this is the Federal Criminal Code. Its pages hold some 5,000 criminal laws passed by Congress and signed by presidents. That's a lot, but it's only a drop in the bucket when you consider there are hundreds of thousands of federal regulations that carry criminal penalties.
I've seen the estimate of at least 300,000, it's probably more like 400 or 500,000 regulations that carry criminal penalties.
Federal agencies are often given tremendous power by Congress to create regulations that carry criminal penalties and can drastically affect people's lives. Power that's been upheld by the Supreme Court.
Unelected bureaucrats are making regulations that can land you in jail.
Sure, and it's a huge number. We all have one thing in common, me included, which is at one time or another, we have probably violated some criminal regulation. We just don't know it. We were lucky enough not to get caught and prosecuted.
Well, Professor James Duane from Regent University School of Law joins me now. He's a former defense attorney and author of a book called, quote, You Have the Right to Remain Innocent. So it's a pleasure to welcome Professor Duane. Good to have you with us. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Hey, what about this? Is it true that these bureaucrats have set in something like 500,000 potential crimes that we commit?
Yes, that's a reliable estimate. Part of the problem is nobody knows the exact number, and it probably changes every day.
Well, how do they have the power to do this?
Well, unfortunately, it's because Congress and the Supreme Court have delegated an excessive amount of discretion on the part of federal regulatory agencies to write these regulations that are then incorporated by reference to the provisions of federal criminal statutes that make it a crime to violate any of the regulations. So every time they write a new regulation, even if it's never been reviewed or read by Congress, suddenly there's a new criminal law on the books.
Is the crime to... all right. Give me some examples of some of the horribles that are in there. You know a few of them, I'm sure.
Sure. Well, it's a federal crime, for example, to be found in possession of the seeds of a water hyacinth plant that have been transported across state lines, even if you didn't transport them yourself.
A water hyacinth plant?
Yes. Even just for the seeds cannot be crossed state lines. Or if you run an advertisement in the paper indicating that you are willing to transport hyacinth seeds across state lines, that's a criminal offense too. Here's another one. It's a federal criminal offense to sell or possess margarine in a container if there's more than 1 pound of margarine inside the container. If you split it up into 2 different containers, you're fine. But you put more than 1 pound of margarine in a single container, and you've committed a crime under federal law.
How many years do you get for that?
I think you can get only up to 6 months in a federal prison example. But there are countless other examples of the same thing. And the problem is that these are so counterintuitive. Nobody relying only on their God-given common sense.
Yeah.
Would ever imagine that I can go to jail for taking a child to a fight between roosters before his 16th birthday, but you can go to jail for that one too.
Well, I take a child to a rooster fight before his 16th birthday, I can go to jail.
Don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, well, the last thing I'll do, I'll tell my wife not to take your grandchildren to a rooster fight. Can Trump, by executive order, nullify a great many of them if he wants to?
Yes. Yes. He can. The president, fortunately for all of us, the president has the power to do an awful lot to ameliorate the situation in 2 different ways. Either by directing his agencies to repeal all of these regulations. There are a great number of them, as we know President Trump has already done. Or to instruct the Attorney General of the United States to instruct his subordinates to see to it that they exercise their discretion to not bring prosecutions against individuals who are guilty of violating rules and regulations that nobody in their right mind would have ever imagined could have been on the books and that don't pose any danger of harm to anyone. They could do that.
You think anybody will?
That somebody will actually do that?
Yeah.
I think there's a great deal of resistance, to this sort of thing. And it's possible that in the long run we may see some marginal improvement in the situation, but it's not likely to happen overnight because the part of the problem is that despite all of his powers, there's only so much the president can do to limit the discretion of the untold number of hundreds of thousands of investigative agents who work for the federal government. It's not just the FBI and the DEA. Almost every federal agency now has, as I said, over 100,000 in total, regulatory agents, investigative agents who work for the Department of Land Management and Indian Affairs and the National Park Service and the Library of Congress has its own investigative agents, and they're all out there working full-time, trying to prosecute and make cases and to justify their existence by making cases against individuals who are guilty of nothing more than petty offenses.
Do you have any idea what the cost to this nation is of all that stuff?
We don't know, and I think it's fair to say that nobody knows the exact amount, but it's a staggering sum.
Staggering?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but what does it do to people when they get put in jail under these things? Have we worked out the sociological implications of what it does to the human beings who are prosecuted?
Well, the sociological implications are devastating. Even if we try to comfort ourselves with the knowledge that we only gave this one 6 months in prison, that's still 6 months of an individual's liberty that has been taken away from them forever. And now that they've got a criminal conviction, if it was a felony conviction, they won't be able to possess a firearm. They've lost their Second Amendment rights. They may not be able to vote again, depending on the laws of that particular jurisdiction. So it's not a small matter to put somebody behind bars, even for just a short time.
You wrote a very intriguing book, You Have the Right to Remain Innocent. You told people not to say anything if they get arrested. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the things, because, the bad news is, as you said in your story, over-criminalization has put us in a situation where every one of us is always subject to being possibly prosecuted for doing something that we didn't know was a crime. Yeah. The good news, the silver lining, is that as Congress and the regulatory agencies have grossly expanded the scope of federal law, criminal law, the expanse of the Fifth Amendment at the same time has been expanded so that now you can fairly say under almost any conceivable circumstances that I can't answer questions that are posed to me without warning by any kind of a federal agent because I don't know whether I may be implicating myself in the commission of a crime.
Okay.
So
you're pleading the fifth on every one of them.
That's my advice to everybody.
It is. So, everyone, when somebody is accused of one of these things, you immediately plead the fifth.
Well, certainly you can't take the risk of admitting you did something and find out later that actually, unbeknownst to you, that the possession of this particular sort of a fish was in violation of the laws of some other foreign nation, and they could therefore be prosecuted in federal court. There's a federal law in the books called the Lacey Act that makes it a federal crime for you to be found in possession of any animal or plant or form of wildlife if the possession of that particular item is forbidden under the laws of any other country on the face of the earth. One man was sent to a federal prison because he was found in possession of a Honduran bony fish, the possession of which was not illegal under American law, but the federal government took the position that it was illegal to export such a thing from the Honduras.
Come on, you can't be serious.
In fact, he went to federal prison for that.
He went to prison because he had a bonefish that was illegal in another country in Honduras?
And this is also, I might add, why the Fourth Amendment is now more vital than ever before. If the police officers ask you, you mind if I search your trunk, look inside your car, or search your apartment without a warrant, you've got to say no. No, under any circumstances. You don't know what they might find. Did you know that under Virginia law, it is a crime to possess a seashell?
Come on.
It is a crime. Yes, there's a law here in Virginia on the books that says it is a crime to be found in possession of anything that ever was once a part of the carcass of anything that was ever a wild animal. Well, that includes a seashell and a sand dollar and a little necklace with a shark tooth that your granddaughter brought back from the Bahamas.
I can't believe it.
Well, that's why you've got to make sure you don't let the police search your car. They might find something you brought back from the beach by accident.
Oh, my goodness. The kids are out there on the beach picking up shells all the time, and they're committing crime.
Here in Virginia, there was an actual case where a man was told by investigative agents in the city, in the state capitol, he was found in possession of a couple of antlers that had been shed by deer on his property. They were just, nobody had harmed the deer,
Yeah.
much less him. They had been naturally shed. He thought these might look good on my office wall. He picked them up, and he was advised by state agents in Richmond that you can't possess that under state law because that was once part of a wild animal. So the solution, like I said, is to make sure that all of your listeners have an understanding of the fact that the Fifth Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, which have always been indispensable requirements and protections against governmental overreach, are now more important than ever before. I don't mean any disrespect to law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
We owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude for what they do for our protection. It's not their fault, but because of the way Congress and state legislatures are out of control, it's absolutely critical now that you don't agree to let the police search your place, or that you don't answer their questions.
Is this a syndrome of the left that they want to punish people who don't agree with them, or is this across the board?
I think the problem is across the board. There was a recent Supreme Court case involving one of these crazy prosecutions where Justice Elena Kagan, a well-known liberal Democratic appointed to the Supreme Court, she said the problem we're seeing in this case is a reflection of what she called a deeper pathology in the American criminal law. She said it was over-criminalization, and the problem we've got way too many laws on the books that are too vague, too overbroad, too ambiguous, with excessive penalties that give the prosecution far too much discretion in deciding how to prosecute what might ordinarily seem like a fairly minor offense.
What do you teach at Regent yourself? You teach courses on this, I hope?
I'm a man under authority. I do what I'm told. The dean says you teach this class, and I go here, and I go there.
I think you've got to teach these things for sure.
Oh, we do.
I'll do what I can to make it happen. Your book, can people get a copy of this? You have the right to remain innocent.
Yes, they can, and they should. It's available on Amazon, which is also the publisher of the book.
Okay. James Dwayne, you have the right to remain innocent. What an interesting thing. Please come back, will you? It's good to have you.